to episode 2 of Two Queens Make a Pair. Thank you for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed our first podcast. I think that we may have fixed the sound. We were joking earlier that we are the two least tech savvy people.
That's not a joke. That's real.
We were saying earlier that we are two of the least tech savvy people that you will ever meet, and we are trying to film a podcast.
We got microphones.
We know the material. Like
we do. We're
good at that.
We're good at talking.
We're good at talking.
We're really good at talking. We have podcast equipment,
and we have podcast equipment. What more do you need? Maybe to know how to work it. But
yeah,
we're getting there. So hopefully the sound sounds better in this episode.
Stick with
moving
us.
Forward. Yes, please stick with us. Don't give up on us just yet. But thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you guys being here. So yeah, I think that I'm gonna just bounce right off of the last statement I made that I want this to be a continuation conversation from one episode to the other. And so last week we talked a lot about burnout, or no, this week. Last week we talked about self-care and how it impacted our childhood, how it impacts us now, and how it impacts our relationship. And so this week, as we move into the topic, I think it's going to be good that we bring back some self-care into our discussion.
You love talking about self-care.
We will talk self-care.
About self-care in every session.
I just think it's so important. I just think it's an important topic that we can't get enough of. So yeah, we'll keep talking about it. But the topic of today, the first topic I'm gonna throw at you, I guess I should say, is stigma. What does stigma mean to you?
Typically negative stigma, especially when we talk about mental health. There's an idea, I would say, especially for men, who they're not allowed to talk about their feelings. They're not allowed to express their feelings and be validated in that. And with mental health in general, I think that this next generation, Gen Zers, I'm so bad at knowing who's what. Like, we're elder millennials, and like that's all I've got. So I think this next upcoming generation who's about to be in the workforce and everything, I think they have a really good grasp on, we should talk about our mental health, and we should talk about our medications and our management. But I think us and up haven't had that much allowance to discuss that. So I think the stigma is, it's mental health is you put it in a box, you hide it, and that's not for the public. That's for at home, if you even get to talk about it at home.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, we do get to talk about it at home.
We talk about it all the time, as you can see from these episodes. I think that's a really good point. I certainly think that the younger generations are doing better. I think if you start with, I love to talk generations and the change of how culture shifts from generation to generation. You know, if you look at baby boomers, if you cry, you're weak, sort of thing. You know, for not for everyone, but that is the mentality of a lot of the boomer generation is you just push through. You know, you sweep it under the rug, sort of
I would say even for not just like crying and weakness, but especially in cases of sexual assault, that sort of for women, it's just like, well, this is just part of life and you don't talk about it. Grandma didn't talk about it. Great grandma didn't talk about it. And that's just what it was. And you just keep on moving forward. And those things don't happen. And so I think that's a big topic that generationally we get to dissolve that stigma.
You know, and I agree. And I think it's almost on the opposite spectrum of that for the older generations too, is that we don't talk about our negative emotions, sadness, anger, but also we don't really talk about and celebrate the positive ones too either. Right? Like we accomplish these really good things. But I think women especially,
then you're bragging.
Yeah. Then you're bragging. You're conceited, you know, all these things. So it's like you have to fit in this certain spectrum, this bubble of what's accepted from society.
And I will say, we live in the South, so sometimes our view of that is a little skewed of what is expected of a Southern woman versus maybe, you know, I have some friends who live like in Chicago and New York and different things, and they're like, oh, that wasn't really like a pressure for us, just the situational growing up too. So I would say, especially in the South, there's a lot of expectations for, you can see almost this cut and divide of generations of the stigma of mental health, for sure.
Yeah. And like I said, you know, if you look at baby boomers all the way to Gen Zers, it is a huge shift. It is a very big shift. And, you know, I love talking about my first days as the mental health therapist at UACCB, because I had always been involved in this captivating audience as far as my clients were always there. I worked in a day treatment facility for kids and youth, and my clients were just there. When I got to work, they were there ready to go. Same as residential, same as inpatient. I worked in our adult psychiatric unit at the hospital, and when I showed up to work that morning, my patients were just there, ready to be seen. And so when I moved to the traditional outpatient setting, or at the school, which is like an outpatient type clinical perspective, my audience wasn't there. My patients weren't there, you know.
Yeah, go get them.
I had to find them, and so it was a little bit of this insecurity of like, I don't know how to do that. I'm not really sure what that looks like. And I will never forget, it was a Thursday, and I had a client that I had on my schedule for a while. I'd been seeing this person for a few weeks, and I saw them in the parking lot. And, you know, I will say I'm very good at boundaries, especially with my clients that I have. And it's not that I ignore people, but I certainly don't spark up conversation in the middle of a parking lot to talk about how they're doing. And so I just kind of smiled, nodded, kept my head down, sort of thing. And this person started waving from across the parking lot and was like, Maggie, is my appointment what time's my appointment next week? When is my appointment? And it was like this moment that clicked. This younger generation does not care. They want to talk about what they're going through. They want to talk about what medications they're taking. They want to talk about symptoms that they're having and treatment that they're undergoing. And so it's like, that was a whole different idea that I had never even seen before.
Yeah. I really think where social media gets it wrong in so many ways, what it does do right is this interconnectedness. And TikTok especially is this... The TikTok. We're old. Is this interconnectedness of... I see the bipolar, the BPD baddies, the list that goes on of there's pharmacists, Gen Z pharmacists, who are talking about signs and symptoms of medications that you may not know or remember if you're not watching, you know, the commercials that have all the side effects. And so explaining it in languages that people can understand across generations, and explaining things in a way that lets people not feel isolated in their mental illnesses, which is half the, I don't know statistics of the things, but like the more we talk about it, the better we are. The more knowledge of there are other people in this world who are experiencing these very similar things. I'm not alone in this, or I can get through something because someone shared something on social media about a positive experience that we had with a therapist, or a positive experience that we had with medication management, with the nursing staff, with outpatient and inpatient stay. And especially inpatient, I think there's sort of the joke of like the grippy sock vacation. And I always say though, like when you go to the hospital, everybody gets grippy socks. We don't want anybody to fall down. And so that's what grippy socks are for. So
you actually had grippy socks.
I had grippy socks recently.
Last vacation at the hospital for your lung surgery.
Yes. So So it's this idea that inpatient treatment is not the only treatment. And I think generations before us, they called it the nut house and all the things that they called it, but there wasn't steps in between, or they didn't know that they had access to steps in between. And so it's really cool. One of my favorite things to talk about what you do is it's included in their tuition. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing first-time college students, first-generation college students. You're seeing hardworking, I say kids, they're 18, kids. 19-year-old, they're kids. But there's a different layer that you specifically get to do with our community college is people having second chances, second, third, fourth chances. I myself was a non-traditional student when I was at the campus going through nursing school, and I was 30 when I started nursing school. So there were people in my class who were 40, who are 50, who are going through divorces, who are having grandchildren, who are doing all these things, who never had access to mental health care in such capacity that it was almost, now knowing how much we have it on campus, it's weird to be in the real world and not just be showered with mental health resources for the students that you get to see, especially.
Yeah, one of the most rewarding statements that I hear from students is, I've never been able to see a therapist. I've never been able to have this opportunity because sometimes it's financial reasons. Sometimes it's the stigma of my parents never allowed it. And now I'm an adult. Now I can make decisions. Now they don't have to know that I'm seeing someone for treatment. And so that is like, I'm motivated to help every client, but that is like one that really just, that sticks with me, because it's like this person is coming in with zero knowledge or some knowledge maybe of what therapy should be like, and they are willing to be vulnerable and show all of these emotions that come with therapy and reprocessing and healing through some really deep trauma. And I think that is how we debunk, how we take away the stigma of mental health, is that we have to really dive into that vulnerability, and we have to talk about it, and we have to really share those stories from our perspectives and from other perspectives as well. It's like, I think that I want to talk about millennials in a second, because we've dogged on the boomers and the Gen Zers, but I think that it's hard to sometimes put yourself in that situation of, okay, what would I have done in that case? What would I have done as that college student with this service that's being offered? And so, I'm curious from your perspective, like thinking back to your early college days when you were fresh out of high school, would free therapy have been something you would have?
Oh, 100%. Taken? Yeah, I would have. So I actually, my first 2 years right out of high school, I went to Williams Baptist. It was Williams Baptist College then. They've progressed in the world. They're university now. And I hold a lot of endearment and love towards the university itself and the people that I met there and the staff. So I actually started as a Christian ministries major, and I was a double major in the English education department. So I had a really hard transition, just high school to college, in that I was used to being top of my class, and everything came pretty easy to me, which was a gift because I stayed so busy that I never studied. And we've shared some of that personally of what home life looked like, and I'm sure we'll dive into that, later. But specifically, I remember being, and I didn't know what depression was. I didn't know definitions of anxiety, but now that my frontal lobe is developed, but also now that I just know about mental illness, there was so much I was experiencing that I wrote about, I journaled about it, but I was on campus. I was a cheerleader. I was on a scholarship for acting also, so I was doing dual extracurriculars. and I had a little job at the pizza place. So I felt like I was thriving on the outside, but on the inside, I remember being like, I'm going to cry again.
Shocker.
I am in a room full of very, very happy people, and I don't understand why I don't feel whatever they are appearing to feel. And at that time, none of us were talking about how depressed we were. We were talking about mission trips and how we were going to save the world. And, there were people that there's sort of a joke, like the MRS degree. When you go to a Christian college, you go to find a husband, and obviously it was not finding a husband. Hindsight. But I did date some guys, and that didn't work out.
So many jokes I could say there,
but there was all of these people that I felt were really on the right track, and that they were happy and joyous, and I felt like I had good moments, but I didn't know what was internally wrong. Why I always felt, why am I not as happy as these people? Even in cheerleading, and even with the people that I was in theater with, who were incredible and who are still my friends 15 years later, which is so crazy, to say. But if I would have had access, back to the actual question, if I would have had access to a mental health therapist at the time, I think I would have been like, I want to see what this is about.
Because you're a curious person.
I'm a curious person.
You want to see what everything's about.
What if I would have met a different therapist first?
Stories would have unfolded differently, I'm sure.
Very, very different. Yeah. But and then with my home life, I actually ended up not finishing at Williams, and I came back home because my home life was just really rocky. That's a good word for now. And so I had this expectation from my family that I was always the person who took care of them. And so I was still expected to take care of them. And so I quit college, and I actually went to UACCB on the, long time ago.
And as we were talking earlier about many times that we met, Sam and I actually graduated together from UACCB 2013. Yeah. Walked across the stage, same time, well, not, I guess not the same time, but same hour essentially. And never would have known that unless we had talked about it.
Yeah. And I was working 3 jobs at the time when that was happening, because I was trying to pay for things and trying to help my family out. And so at that time didn't have access to a therapist. So when I was at UACCB the first time, I would not have, because I was in this season of, I have to work. I have to essentially get back out of this town and take care of my family in whatever capacity that was. And so I think I would not have understood at that time that I was allowed to navigate what that looked like. That's the allowance of self-care, the allowance of, the productivity versus the reward for that. So I think I would have been like, oh, I'm taking care of it myself. I'm not bad enough that I need a therapist. I'm not crazy.
Right. I'm not crazy. Yeah.
And that's something that I hear at the hospital.
Other people have it a lot worse than I do. So
yeah,
they need it.
I didn't realize, I didn't realize that these things were like internally messing with my mental health. I was just like, this is just how it's always been, and so this is how it is. So I think that particular time would have been really difficult for me to seek out a therapist at UACCB, because I was trying to get off campus as quickly as possible. I came in late because I was working at the coffee shop before class, and then I was up late. I was bartending at night, and so I wasn't sleeping. I was not doing well. And so I remember going to the doctor actually, and I was like, I need help. These migraines are like death. And he was like, you have to sleep. And I said, when?
We'll talk about sleep a lot.
When am I going to sleep? And so even that, I was like, well, I sleep, 4 hours. That's sleep. Which is nothing. And so, but I wasn't even allowing myself to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And, kind of piggybacking off of the last conversation that we had, as far as the pressure of, succeed, productivity, this pressure to be perfect and to get so many things done. I think that there have been times where I'm like, I need 48 hours in one day.
Yeah.
To get everything.
That's not enough.
To get everything done. And, you know, you saying all that really clued in. I think that is a generational thing too. I think that millennials have felt this pressure to be the best, to get the highest degree, to get the most out of, you know, student loans and debt and all that.
I will say too, I think there was a big shift in when we were in high school, probably really started. So one, smartphones, like that was huge.
Yeah.
That was a starter when we were in high school. And then, so accessibility of, we started tiptoeing into social media. We started tiptoeing into life comparison. Yes. Yeah. In life comparison of pretty pictures. Instagram, was it? Maybe it started. Maybe it didn't. I don't know.
It was later than it was much later than Facebook.
So for sure Facebook though. And so we were starting to trickle into this. What are other people eating? What are other people thinking? What are other people feeling? And sharing, the MySpace. Did you have MySpace?
I did. Tom was my best friend.
Of course.
Oh my gosh. I love the top friends. But that's pressure, right?
That's
to
pressure.
Be on someone's top friends list.
Also, I have never been so, just as an aside, I have never been so good at technology as when I could redo a whole MySpace. Everything.
You think that makes you good at technology?
No, I was good. I could like code and embed and all these things, and those are the only words I ever knew about technology because Tom and me, we did it together. But so this comparison, and we have established that we were very, very different in high school. So my friends, we were like the little emo kids, and hindsight, we were all depressed. We were really emotional. So we sharing music and all these just different things. So we had started to tiptoe into that. So that's sort of where I was going with that. And then there's this shift in college can really take you places. And I think there was this national push of go to college. It's more accessible now than it's ever been. You can take out student loans where you couldn't take them out before. And now your parents are both college educated. Your mom has a master's degree. My parents did technical colleges, which is always really, really good. There's no shame in that. But they didn't finish like a 4-year degree. And both of my parents did, they served in the Navy, and they did trade per Navy requirements. So my mom was a diesel mechanic in the Navy. My dad, eventually he did like small engine repair, but he did different things in the Navy. And so they worked. And college, they were like, college will take you different places that I got to go. And so they wanted me to be better. They were like, we sort of settled, but you don't have to. And so I think that was sort of like our parents' generation of, we settled and you don't have to. So go to college and explore, and it's going to take you places.
Which sometimes in turn, in some, like, I know for me, in my perspective, it was, I heard those things, which it was never, college was like it never felt like an option. Like that was just what I was supposed to do and what I was going to do. But in turn, it was hearing that, here's all this opportunity. It was, here's what you have to succeed in.
Yeah.
Here's what you have to be better at. Here's what you have to do. Here's one more thing you have to add to your plate. And it was just what was expected. And, and for me, it was seeing this success from so many members of my family that it was like, well, I have to do that too.
Yeah, even your grandparents are educated.
Yeah, my grandpa, he worked for Health Resources and was the housing director. I'm not sure what his title was, but he was like over the housing for all of Health Resources. And my grandma, she was very high up management for human resources for energy for a long time, and then opened up her own staffing company. I saw my dad, he succeeded in loans. I always call him the loan officer for farming. I'm not sure what I know that is the technical term. Dad, if you're watching this, please comment your actual title, what that was. And then, I saw my mom. She became division chair, which is like the director of arts and humanities for UACCB. She worked there for 18 years, and so I saw her success. I saw my aunt and uncle succeed in their career as well. So everyone had a lot of success that I saw growing up, and it was just that was the path I was going to follow in. Yeah. And I would not change a thing. Like I love my job, and I love the work that I've achieved in academia and in my career. But that was what it was supposed to be. And I think that I think back to like my friends, you know, talking about your friends in high school, my friends, that was what we all were supposed to do.
Yeah.
I have a friend, one of my best friends from high school. She's an attorney in Little Rock, and she's a badass attorney. Like she's doing all kinds of stuff. Alex, if you watch this, here's you a shout out. You know, I have friends. I have one friend that is a statistician for UAMS. One friend who has a master's degree in reading. Like we all. And my mom made this comment one time. She was like, your group like went above and beyond the expectations for career and for education. And yeah, I think that we did, but I don't think that we had I don't think that we thought we had a choice.
Right.
I think that was what it was supposed to be.
And so for my friends, I have friends who I have met and collected over the years, but my high school friends, now, I think they're all very accomplished. So let me say this. I think very, very highly of trade schools and people who accomplish. Honestly, there's no student debt. Like they're living 100%. Their best life.
I hope that's what our kids do.
Yeah, they're fantastic parents. They are happy and they're thriving. And that's also, both paths are okay. But we sort of grew up with it was our parents were like, you can do better than what we did. You don't have to stay in this small town forever. Mm-hmm. Go out and see the world. And so for the people that I think stayed and they were confident in their staying, I always felt, I don't anymore, but I felt that when I came back home, I was a failure because I didn't leave. I didn't travel. I didn't see the world. Like my parents had sort of been like, you can do that.
Yeah. And
so for my friends who, I have a friend who's like a pipeliner and a friend who works on power lines and cosmetology and nurses, and which are all, we need these jobs. We need people to do these jobs. But that was sort of, we also went to different high schools. And I think there was a different push from your education.
She's also a lot older than me.
I am not a lot older.
2 years. Not a lot 2 years older.
But I do think there was a shift, a huge shift in, we could take college concurrent classes, which was incredible. And then whenever we got to college, though, there was this weird gap in, my specific group lost a lot of freshman scholarships because we didn't go in as freshmen.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't a lot of grace for that. And that actually dipped a lot of my friends out of college because we had taken all these concurrent courses and then we were supposed to be freshmen and we needed the money to go to college and it wasn't there for us. So my parents and I paid a lot of money out of pocket for me to go to Williams Baptist because while I did get some scholarships, I lost a lot of, because they hadn't quite figured out the system yet. So I had a lot of friends, I am someone who we didn't complete our 4-year degrees because we had to come back home and like take care of life. And we didn't know that it was an option to say, that is not my life. That is your life as my parents. And I need to take care of myself. We didn't know that was an option.
And so that statement of not knowing that was an option, how do you relate that to stigma?
That just circles back to, my parents didn't know that they could address their mental illness. And so they expected us to, it's not a mental illness. We just take care of the family. It's not depression. It's not anxiety. So I know that it's hard, but you have to come home. You have to.
Yeah. I know it's hard. You have to push through.
Yes.
You have to.
And not push through college on our end. It
Right.
wasn't, and I can say that pretty confidently with a lot of my friends. We need you to come back home and work and help. I have friends who, their families own land and farm, and times are just hard sometimes. And so, or some people had kids really early on, and the easier, I don't want to say easier, quick path to taking care of children is quickly start working.
Yeah.
And so the jobs around here that are quickly to start working, they're high paying, really great opportunity jobs. They're not college jobs.
Yeah.
You can't go for that long and acquire this much debt and expect to take care of kids in your early 20s if this is what's happening. And so here's the box for the things that are wrong, the things that hurt me when we were kids, and not just me specifically, just, the general consensus of my friends and sort of what we grew up in. These are the things that hurt me. These are the things that were obstacles. But now, put a lid on it because, well, those things are done. And now we're just going to open a new box, and whatever that looks like, whatever has to go in the next box has to go in the next box.
Which is kind of that expectation, too, of having kids. It's like,
yes.
And I see that generation to generation. It's like, okay, well, I was effed up in my generation, so, I'm going to have kids to fix what has been broken.
Yes.
And I think that it's common.
Are we not saying the F word? Is this family fun?
I might let it slip in some point. But I think, there's this epigenetic effect that we see, this trauma that's passed down from cycle to cycle. And it is common to hear stories from people that, their parents had their parents to fix what had been broken, but then just continue to pass on this generational curse. And, I think that the stigma really is, we're just going to sweep it under the rug. We're going to keep having kids, or we're going to keep trying to fix this thing that's been broken without really addressing the problem, without really addressing whatever that problem is.
Sometimes the problem is we're having too many kids.
Sometimes that's the problem.
Sometimes it's the problem.
But sometimes the problem is we're not addressing why we're asking kids to come back home and fix the family. We're not addressing why that hit on her. We're not addressing the root to why these patterns continue to be passed down from generation to generation. And that goes from boomer to Gen Z. I mean, that is, and whatever was before boomer, like that, that goes beyond one generation to another. And I will say, circling back to the Gen Zs, I think that they have it right.
They're not having kids.
They're not having kids, yeah. But they're also talking. They're talking about their mental health.
And I would say a lot, I'm going to give some credit to the millennial generation. I think that we are seeing patterns and we don't like them. And we're not getting it right by any means. Like, it's never perfect. But even talking, our kids, what we sort of talked about earlier in the previous episode, but when my kids reverberate something back to me that I say, and that it's okay. When my daughter says, I just need to be alone, I was never allowed to say that. Yeah. And that she just knows that that's okay. We sort of joke that whenever they have a partner, especially our daughter, that whenever someone says you're pretty, she's gonna say and, because she has such a high expectation of how we speak to her, how we speak to each other, and how she speaks of herself. Now, does she have insecurities? And she's 7, and so she's going through these things, but she's going to know I am more than pretty. I'm more than smart, and I am okay in myself. And if you don't bring something to the table that is equitable and good, then you don't have to sit at my table. And we can sit at other tables, and everybody can have their own thing. And I think our son does a really good job of that too, of he's just like, I know the people who make me feel good, and I know the people who kind of make me feel like crap. Yeah. And so he wants to they surround themselves with people that make them feel good.
Yeah. Gen Z generation and below, they the common theme for these generations is they will ask why.
Yeah.
Why do I have to do something? Why is this needed?
Which is
why? And millennials, we were not allowed to ask why.
We weren't allowed to ask why.
It was just, hey, you're gonna go do this, okay?
Or because I said so.
Because I said
that's the answer. And so it's funny that you bring that up, because sometimes I think that's hard for you to
always
to answer a why question. And
because I said so.
She wants to just say, just do it. And there are some things that we have explained. There are emergency times that we need you to know that we are serious. There's a tornado warning. Get in the shelter area.
There's a fire. Get outside.
Yeah. But there are also, I told her I didn't really know that it was a goal until it became a goal, was I am not going to ask my kids to do something that I can't explain. And I'm not going to just say, I don't want you to do something because I said so. When we first started dating, there was this, in this house that I had, we were renting it, but it had this beautiful glass double doors to outside. And she came over and she was like, why have the kids painted on the glass? And I said, because it's washable. Because it's been raining outside and I needed them to do something else besides watch TV and do all this other stuff. And she was like, what do you mean they painted on the window? And I said, it's washable. Like, I can't give you any other reason. I couldn't tell them. Actually, I think it was my idea. I was like, yes, we should paint the windows because it washes off. I never buy paint that can't wash off to begin with. But so there are certain things that and it's funny because my mother as a mother would never have allowed that. But my mom as grandma, she came over with more paint for the windows. And she was a different person as grandma. So my kids and niece and nephew, they called her Gigi. So when Gigi came over, it was fun time. We could paint on the walls. Messes can be cleaned up.
They've also got a Nana that is a very different.
Yeah, Nana is very different.
So Susie, when you watch this, here's your shout out. Great grandmother there. Your great grandmother.
It's just funny though, because I am very, I like to say whimsical and free spirited, but I couldn't tell them there's not a reason to not paint on the windows. Specifically these ones. Now we had, some guidelines. We can't paint where we can't clean.
Yeah.
And so when the kids were little, and that's the house that we lived in, and I was studying and in nursing school, and I would put two little trays up, dinner trays, and they would sit up against the window, and they had their little decaf coffee because we all had coffee. And so that was like how we passed the time on Saturday mornings, because I sat at the table and I studied, and they painted the window. They painted the doors. Mm-hmm. And there are certain things that we just never would have been allowed to do.
Right.
And growing up, the funnier thing to that is, I think about it, it's like we own the house now. So this is our house. So a rent house makes more sense as to be a little more, conservative with what you do. But it's like, sometimes we'll talk about, we want to make a change to the house. And she's like, we're not going to be able to resell. I like that's your thought. We won't be able to resell if we paint the walls blue. And I'm like, the great thing about paint is we can just paint it back. And I think that there was this growing up, there wasn't the generation above us. It was, this is the way that it is. And we're always thinking about reselling. We're always thinking about
the future. Yeah.
The future. And I am thinking about, I want blue walls now. Mm-hmm. And I think later in life, my mom did a really good job of letting me just be whimsical. And so I do think I do credit her for some letting me be expressive.
Yeah. She
didn't really care what I wore. She was very strict on a lot of things, but there was a lot of things that I just got to be. And I think she knew that I was going to be whoever I was, no matter what. So bring it back to the stigma of even just our, I say small, but they end up being big things. It wasn't just mental health. It was because I said, because this is how we were raised, because this, without saying, no, I just want to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that our generation and below, are expressing themselves in ways that we weren't allowed to before, and sort of goes back to that interconnectedness of the social media, the good things about social media that we get to see and share. And somebody else has a blue wall, so hey, this is a great idea. I want to piggyback on that and do the same thing. So I think it's not just mental illness that we are breaking these patterns. It is so many layers of what we're doing generationally,
which I think there is a really good segue to then bring in burnout, because the more we stay in this stigma of life, the more we sit in these layers of the pressure that comes with this how it's always been sort of mentality, really can create a sense of burnout.
And that's sort of this is the opposites of when I'm in such monotony, then that's when I get burnt out. I have to have something else to get my focus on, I guess. And that's, we'll talk a lot about this later too, I know. My ADHD versus clear thinking.
My neurotypical brain.
And so, but it also really helps us understand our kids, just at the very base level of, we have one kid with ADHD and one not.
One not at all.
Not at all. And so even just understanding our kids, and I've heard you say this before too, of being friends with me while I was going through nursing school made you a better therapist, or a more receptive therapist to other students in nursing school now, because you saw how hard it was, and you didn't necessarily walk in it, but boy, you were right beside it. And so I think that when we have these experiences, and I think a really good reason that we wanted to do this podcast is because the level of being understanding to other people's circumstances, that is what breaks the stigma.
Absolutely. And you know, I love to think about stigmas being broken, and I love to think about those aha moments where people recognize that their generational cycles are being broken and being changed. One of my favorite memes, it was on Facebook, it was this it obviously showed generation to generation, but it started with this person yelling at this person and moving forward, and at the very end of the picture you saw this, what perceived to be a mom, holding her child, and it had like the mom had like a big shield, and so she was stopping those generational cycles from happening. And I love that, because what that shows is it just takes one person to break it. It takes one person to break those cycles. And I think that a lot of times we have to push through in a way, but we have to accept that burnout is a part of that process, that we do feel burnout. We do feel overwhelmed, and just like we can't get through to make those stigmas more manageable. I won't say disappear, but more manageable.
That was so like when I was in nursing school and I started having a therapist, actually,
which was not me,
which was not her, but that was something that I told her. I said, I have a surface problem. I said, I know that I have so many other problems, believe. I said, but I cannot get through nursing school with this surface problem. And at the time it was my marriage, my previous marriage. And so rocky is a good word for what it was. But I was like, I can't go home every day and see him and be in this rocky place and be a mom, and I can't do it and be a nursing student. And I said, I have to get through nursing school, or I'm not going to be a good mom to my kids later on. I'm not going to be anything that might be salvageable in the marriage that I was in. I was like, there's not anything right now that's salvageable, no aspect of my life, unless I get this very top layer broken. And I was like, we'll circle back to like childhood and parents and generational trauma and all these things. I said, but I have to get through right now. And I think sometimes allowing the person who, you know, is seeking the help, it's like, obviously we know the boxes are where they are. And so the burnout for me specifically was I could not juggle 3 open boxes.
Yeah.
I was like, I have to get one shut and closed.
Yeah. Which was going back to you combating the stigma, right? Because we're just supposed to close these boxes, move on, not deal with them, right?
Yeah,
and sweep it under the rug.
But I wanted to close it appropriately,
right?
I guess
not
I should say. Not just duct tape. I needed the right toolbox.
Yeah.
If we're gonna use, you know, the metaphors, but like I needed. And what was crazy was not crazy. The class that I was in, I would say half of us were going through very, very similar walks. Divorce was a common theme. Rocky marriages was a common theme. Our kids were little. Mine were so little that I was nursing my son, his little baby, and I was reaching over him
he's now 6 today. Happy birthday, Elijah.
But I was literally nursing him, and he's asleep in my arms and studying. I had the YouTube on, and it was the heart chambers. Like that was like a very like visceral memory. Is the marriage that I was in. My son didn't. He only wanted me. Now, also, shout out, like, my ex-husband and I, we have a really great relationship now. He's a really great dad. So, like, just know, like, if you're hearing this, like, there's a lot of work that we have put into that as well. He's a great dad. We all have a really good relationship. So, but at that time, we didn't have a good relationship. And my kids could feel that. Even though we put a mask on, even though whatever we were...
You lived in the stigma.
We didn't fight in front of them. We didn't argue in front of them. There were so many things that we were, you know, doing in the quiet, doing when they were asleep so that they wouldn't see those things. But that was still... This was another box. This was another layer. But the kids knew. The kids know. And they, even as small as they were. So it was... But there was all of us. We were all going through... We were in nursing school, and nursing school made sense. And if you've been through nursing school or have anyone that you know, it's one of the hardest programs that I have ever experienced. It's so difficult, and it's so fast-paced. And our retention rate was really, really bad. People were failing because it's so rigorous and so hard. So the support groups circling back to that too, like that became, we tried a 4-week session or something. And then, weeks 5 and 6, people were like, when's the next support group? Because we realized at a very deep level, we all needed that interconnectedness of, we're going to talk about, and we didn't talk about nursing school. We talked about
just life, like things going
just
on.
Life.
Yeah.
And so I think that alone in our little world of the community was breaking down walls that we were never allowed to break down before.
Breaking stigmas, really. And I love, instead of saying, breaking away and taking away burnout, we just accept it. We accept that it's a part of day-to-day struggle. We accept that it's going to happen, and we feel it, and we heal from it, and we move forward. But in that, I think that the more we talk about stigma, the more we talk about how we combat stigma, the better we get at managing our burnout, the better we get at, and especially, we didn't even touch on this today, but we'll talk a lot about compassion fatigue too, which essentially is living through a vicarious trauma and burnout, having burnout. You get compassion fatigue. And so when we are communicating those emotions and communicating the emotions that we have in stigma, it's like, okay, this feels more manageable. And I love that you brought up the nursing groups, because I think the one thing, if anything, that did for people was it made people feel that they were not alone. And that is such in a society where we're so connected through media, through different groups of people. It's like we can feel so alone. One of the common themes that I hear a lot is I can be in the most crowded space but feel like there is no one within 50 miles of me. And that's a hard feeling to have, and I'm sure that we've all felt that. It's like I know that I'm not going through this alone, but I feel so empty and so isolated from the world right now.
Yeah. It's on Titanic. Kate Winslet. It's when she talks about, she steps to the edge of the railing, and that's actually something that she says. I was in a crowded room and I was screaming at the top of my lungs and nobody heard me. And it's so funny that has always resonated with me. And I think that I started being obsessed with the Titanic movie like when I was like 10 or 11.
But she didn't know she was gay.
Well, I was also obsessed with Leonardo DiCaprio. I didn't know that I was obsessed with Kate Winslet in the capacity that it is. Kate, if you see this,
give us a like.
But that resignation of, I was alone I was in a crowded room screaming at the top of my lungs and nobody heard me. And when in the movie, you know, Jack helps her down, and like she feels seen for the first time. There's been so many times in my life where I can look back and pinpoint someone who made me feel seen, and that probably saved my life. Yeah. Not probably. It did save my life in many, many times. And so knowing that that's sort of our goal, is to make people feel seen, not necessarily that we're lifesavers or, you know, anything
this
like that.
This is not therapy. Let's just say
This is not therapy. This is not therapy. Please only take with, you know, not that you are in isolation. That is what you should take from this. But the things that we have been through, they're not isolated events. We're not the first people to go through grief and trauma and different things, but we have a really unique spot that we have podcast equipment, and we have a couch, and you're a therapist, and I am a nurse in a psychiatric, you know, mental health program as well. And so just the opportunity that we might get to reach out to somebody and really make somebody not feel alone. And just, again, the interconnectedness of what social media and different things allow us to do. Yeah.
So just know, if you feel burnt out, if you feel like you're alone, if you feel heaviness and all of the emotions that are really hard to deal with and to manage, just know that it's okay that you feel that way. It's okay if you feel burnout and overwhelmed. That really the goal in feeling those things is that we have to feel them. We have to, I'm going to go back to it, practice good self-care while we're going through those things, while we're feeling those really hard things.
Yeah. You're allowed to rest.
Rest.
It's not a reward.
It's not a reward. It is a requirement. It's a necessity.
I always think of when I was in nursing school, this mantra that I held on to, you know what I'm going to say, you can do hard things. And we sort of bounced it back and forth. It's been a mantra, but looking back, like, how many hard things have I already done? I'm in a hard thing in this moment. You can do them, and you can continue doing hard things. Like, I would have to tell myself every day of nursing school and beyond, but like that's sort of like where I really dove into that. It's like, you can do this because you can already do hard things, and this is hard, and you can keep doing hard things. And so finding softness around the hard things, I think, is probably the burnout relinquished there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for watching today. We appreciate you being here. Next week, or next episode, I guess I should say, we're not adding any pressure to this podcast. So for our next episode, we'll dive more into burnout, compassion fatigue. Eventually, I know it's coming. We'll talk about trauma and how it impacts our body and relationships and all of that. So thank you guys for being here. Remember that if you have a topic you want us to cover, please comment that. And we're more than happy to dive into that with you. At some point, we're going to have guests on the show, and so I'm really, really looking forward to those opportunities and those conversations. But remember, two queens, one conversation. We'll see you next time.